Hey, how's it going, everybody? Today is going to be a first of a few series of videos. We're going to actually play Path of Exile. It's going to be a full walkthrough, and I just kind of wanted to get some things out of the way moving forward. There are some sort of optional downloads, but they are very and could be described as being extremely useful when it comes to this game. Now, obviously there is a lot of confusion surrounding Path of Exile. It's a very enormous game. It's been around for more than 10 years. And with Path of Exile 2 around the corner, uh, in regards to it being more well known by players, I kind of wanted to make a walkthrough for the campaign and kind of describe everything as we're playing it. Now, I by no means am an expert at this game. I just want to get that out of the way. This is something to sort of bring in new players, have them be more acquainted with the items in the game, not to get overwhelmed by a lot of the mechanics, and also just have some fun with this truly amazing ARPG. Now, originally, you won't be seeing the screen because you'll have to go and download the game, but lucky for you, the game is free to play. You just need to go to pathofexile.com. Up at the top, hit download now. It'll download the game. You will install it and start playing right away. Um, Now that you can log in through Steam if you'd like to. So if you use Steam on a Steam Deck or something like that, you could possibly use this to log into the game. It's not necessary. You can just download it straight from their website. Um, but a couple of things going forward, there are a few community tools that are going to be very helpful in your journey with Path of Exile to not get overwhelmed by it. Uh, One of the first things that I do want to describe is there are an absolute boatload of items that will be dropping in Path of Exile, and the reason for this is because a lot of it is all random. And in order to understand exactly what you need to do when you're playing this game, is looking for specific pieces of gear that are going to be beneficial for your build. Now, not every gear is created equal. Not every piece of gear is created equal. Some gear will be a lot better than others. And with that in mind, it's very helpful to have some sort of a loot filter. So, if you're coming from Last Epoch, say for example, you will notice that a lot of the loot filter choices that we have here are very limited. It can be very difficult and daunting to actually create your own loot filter. It's not something I would really recommend. I've yet to create it myself. But just going forward, just know that it will help your gameplay tremendously because it will filter out a lot of the stuff that isn't very good for your character. It'll filter out a lot of the items that aren't really worth seeing, let alone picking up and using. So for that, the reason why I've included this in the video, so in order to actually get going and get started with the character, you'll download the game, right? So we have the game here. We're ready to go. We hit login, and you'll probably not see any characters here because it'll be your first time. But you can also filter all of your characters here to show which league you want to show by. So if I hit show all, it'll show all my characters that I've created. Obviously, you can see some are like level 16, some are level 2. The character that I'm currently playing is a Lacerate bleed character, level 92. Still not done with him. Still having a ton of fun on him right now. So first and foremost, let's get into what the characters are in the classes. So you hit create, and it's going to give you this prompt here. It's going to say choose a league by clicking on a banner below, then select OK. Standard league you don't really want to do. This is going to be just the base game. It's not going to have any other new mechanics that are thrown into it. This mechanic now is called Settlers of Kalgur. So you do not want to choose standard mode unless you don't enjoy any of the new mechanics or the currency reset or something like that. This might be something that you'll play later on when you're a little bit more invested into the game. Hardcore settlers you definitely do not want to do. I do not recommend it, especially for players that do nothing but play hardcore. You will die quite a few times on your first playthrough, and because of that, you won't be able to save any of the loot that you got or learn from your mistakes if you end up dying. So I just recommend choosing this very first one. There's two radio nodes here. The first one is going to be solo self-found. You don't want to do solo self-found as well for a new player because it'll limit your items that you get. Opting out of this will enable it so that you can trade with other players. You can sell items and make better currency. And it'll just create a atmosphere that is really dependent on just you. It's kind of like character found in Last Epoch. Diablo 4 doesn't have this sort of setting, so you don't have to worry about that too much. But you want to be able to expand your character in different ways, and if you're just unlucky in finding gear, this is a great way of showcasing like what you can exactly do. So, yes, we just want to click settlers here. We don't want to click anything else. We don't want to click ruthless. Ruthless is basically an uber hard version of the game. It's created for sort of people that like to have a challenge, that don't want to look for other items. They have to find items themselves. It basically just reduces the amount of items that you get or that you're shown, and it's extremely difficult. So I wouldn't recommend playing this on your first attempt. If you do play this, just be aware that your playthrough will be a lot different than my playthrough. Okay. So we choose settlers is because that's the league that we're currently want to do. And we click OK. Now we have this list of 7 characters. You probably won't be seeing this middle character because you unlock her in the campaign. So we see these 6 characters here. We see the Templar, the Shadow, the Marauder, the Ranger, the Duelist, and the Witch. And these are all the base classes of Path of Exile. Now, if you're coming from Last Epoch, this would be something like Sentinel, Mage, Rogue, Acolyte, etc. Things like that you can ascend into a different class. Being like, if you choose a Sentinel in Last Epoch, you can ascend into a Void Knight, or ascend into a Paladin. Or if you're an Acolyte in Last Epoch, you can ascend into a Necromancer, or ascend into a Lich. Right? So you need to make sure that you choose the correct base class. And although every class is unique, and every base class is unique, you will be restricted to choosing sort of a character that has certain ascendancies. Now, the way you can figure out what those ascendancies are is I'll have these in the description below, but just wanted to kind of iterate that there are 19 different ascendancy classes, each with their own additional ascendancy skill tree, to master. Upon completing the Lord's Labyrinth, which is essentially the way that you get these points, for the first time you can pick an ascendancy class from one of the 3 available for your class. So think of it kind of like Last Epoch, where you kill Elder Gaspar, you go into End of Time, and then you're presented with 3 different choices, and you have to make these choices in order to progress the story. This one you don't necessarily have to do, although it is highly recommended that you complete this whenever it is available. That way your character gets a lot stronger for the area, and you can also do more damage. You can round out your build a lot more, and you can start gearing in a specific way that leads to your character being a lot stronger. So this is the first time that you complete Labyrinth on each difficulty. You will receive 2 ascendancy points for a skill tree. And there are a total of 4 different labyrinths to complete, so that means you end up getting 8 different ascendancy points. Now, this is very important because I have not needed a way to remove my ascendancy points. I am not sure at this current time if it's even easy to do it, so just be aware that what you choose is what you'll end up playing for the rest of the time. It's a very difficult decision to go backwards and choose something different, just like it is in Last Epoch. Last Epoch, it is impossible to switch back, so keep it that same sort of mentality of, once I choose a Slayer, I'm going to be a Slayer, and I can't go to a Gladiator or can't go to Champion. But I kind of wanted to go through a little bit of these. I haven't played all of them. I've played some of them, but just kind of wanted to show you that, the Duelist class, for example, can be a Slayer, a Gladiator, or a Champion. The Shadow can be an Assassin, a Saboteur, or a Trickster. The Marauder can be a Juggernaut, a Berserker, or a Chieftain. So you get the idea. There's different ways to play the character. Each class, when you ascend to it, gets 8 different ascendancy points later on in the game. So just make sure that you choose one that either A, looks cool to you, or B, you already have a guide for. Now, with that going forward, I've just mentioned a guide. It is almost extremely recommended that you follow a guide for your first time. I am going to be playing a Bleed Lacerate build, which essentially is a physical damage build. The reason why I chose this is because I haven't seen too many walkthroughs on the internet that are surrounding like melee classes. So I kind of wanted to do something a little different when it comes to leveling a melee class, having a walkthrough with it, kind of showcasing different things about that. So before we begin, we need to create our character. So we create our Duelist. Make sure that the league is selected as the current league that you're in, which is Settlers for us. And we'll just name our Exile. Now, there are interesting things you can do with your name. You can do all caps, for example. You can do underscores, for example. So you have a lot of selection when it comes to these sorts of things. And a good idea to do is to maybe pick like what class you're playing, the build that you're playing, plus the league. So you could do like Lacerate Settlers, right? To show yourself that, hey, I played a Lacerate build in Settlers, and this is the character that I use, as opposed to naming it like Bouncy Boy or something. Like whatever you want to do. It's harder to discern which class you played at what league you played, because you might play different classes for different leagues, just like I have. So let's name this Lacerate Settlers and jump right in. It says a character with this name already exists, so we could do something different. We can do double underscore. So double underscore works, single underscore does not. So because somebody was already named that. Okay, so we start off. We're initially greeted with this. We're lying face down on the sand, and it is not very good. So we click once, and we have woken up from our slumber. Now, a couple of things to recommend about this going forward. Whenever I start a new game, I personally like to go in the game settings and check different things about the game settings. Make sure that everything is up to date. There's no weird settings that could possibly cause a lot of confusion. I've seen a couple of things with the renderer being like Direct 12X or Vulkan. Vulkan is supposed to be the best one. DirectX right now is working very well for me, so I'm leaving it on that. It needs to be windowed full screen for a couple of different reasons, but if you can't put it in windowed full screen, just do full screen. Okay, so the next tab is going to be Game tab. The Game tab is going to basically change like predictive or lockstep, and these are different networking modes that you can select that just depend on how good your connection is, and different things like that. So first thing is going to be looking at the item filter. Now, yours should just be none, or it should be default. And we're going to change this, so don't worry about that. But let's just have default set for now. Hide filtered items or group items, you want to check that. A key pickup, you can hotkey a specific key to show, or you have to hold it down in order to pick something up, for example. I don't very much enjoy that. Corpse targeting, you can hold A, or you can have it always enabled. I like this one because I don't really target corpse. Auto equip is great. Short allocation is what I use for this, and default downscaling doesn't matter. Now, the UI, there's going to be quite a few things here that you're going to want to enable, right? So An example of this is going to be like the map. You want to show the corner map. You want to auto-center the map. The landscape transparency, if you look at the top right-hand corner, you can see that the mountains and the cliffs start to are able to be seen if it's on the far right and are not able to be seen on the far left. So you want to keep this down to the very left. That way it only shows you the bare minimum of what you need to see. You don't need to see anything extra because that's just going to confuse you about where to go. It might be nice to see initially, but at the very start, just keep it down to the very left and you'll be a lot happier that you did that. Map transparency, you want to be able to see the map, so you want to keep this all the way to the right. And the map zoom doesn't matter. It's a personal preference for you, honestly. I've seen lots of people have it at the very lowest. I like to have it a little closer because I'm a little bit older, so my eyes don't work exactly like they should have. All right, and so the next thing we're going to go through is going to be like items, right? So you always want to show the sockets. The reason for this is because you can determine an item if it's on the ground, if it has sockets. So, for example, if you equip an item or if you have an item in your inventory, for example, let's pick up this sword here, for example, right? So if I hit that, it won't show it, and the only way I can show it is by mousing over. So you want to make sure that these are always selected, so that way you can see the colors and the links and the sockets without actually having to mouse over it. For the socket notches, there's a couple of different patterns you can do here. So if you're colorblind, it's a very good idea to do something like this. That way, it gives you sort of a different look to what the sockets are, and that way you can determine what the color of the socket is just by looking at these little patterns. I think the very first time that I played this game, I had these large patterns associated with the gems just to make it easier for me to see things, because the gem colors, the gem sockets, it was all very confusing to me at the very start. So I don't use that now, but I did when I first did it, and don't feel bad if you have to do that to make it easier for you moving forward. For gameplay, I would recommend selecting all of these. The reason why is because you want to be able to show your health and mana. You don't necessarily have to do hide life mana reservation. This essentially just makes it so that if you reserve some of your mana for like an aura or something like that, it won't show like a gray fill on the mana bar or the health bar. It'll just remove it and it'll just show you your max mana. That way you can visually see when your mana is going down and going up. Show flash and tincture buffs, show aura icons, show mini life bars on allies, on enemies, life bar above you, monster resistance icons, and always highlight. Always highlighting is great because you won't have to worry about missing a chest or missing a name of an individual because you didn't see them. There's a lot of really good benefits to always highlighting things, so I would definitely recommend to keep that there. You can change the cursor if you like to. I just have it on regular. You can have small, medium, or large. I like large because I'm old. Chat doesn't really matter too much, but you can show global chat if you'd like to, or trade chat or guild chat. Really not a big deal. Okay, so with that being selected, sound is completely optional. You don't really need it. Input is where you're going to be doing all your keybinds, and these are all my keybinds. It's very basic, very generic. I think I've changed maybe 2 or 3 different keybinds on here, but everything else is basically set up to where it's very general, and I don't really need to worry too much about what's going on and what buttons to push. Very intuitive. Notifications, very self-explanatory. You don't really need notifications. I don't have any friends, so I don't know why I have this selected here. But that is going to be basically what the game is going to consist of. You want to make sure that the game is on item filters, default. You want to not disable tutorials. You want to auto-equip, and then the UI with the map transparency. Okay, so moving forward, before we get into the actual game, there are a couple of things to understand about this game. Loot filter is one of them. You need to have a loot filter. You need to have a path of building, which is a community tool used to sort of build your character out, and we'll jump into that a little bit more once we kind of get into more of the video. So first and foremost, use left click to move around. Obviously, you can see down here on the right-hand side, this is where we will choose our different skills. You can keybind the different skills to be something different if you'd like to. You can use mouse buttons. You can use middle mouse buttons, different things like that. But a very good common practice is to left-click this sword icon on the bottom and select Move Only. The reason for that is because you don't want to have to accidentally click on a monster when you want to talk to somebody, or when you want to open a chest. It's not going to attack something. So it just makes it very easy in the sense that you don't have to worry too much about missing a click on something, and it's going to be very helpful later on. The next one is going to be, you're going to want to set up your default attack. So default attack is the very start. We don't have any skill gems. As you can see, there's nothing selected in here, and it's going to be basically just your default weapon attack. Now, moving forward, we will, when we get other skills, when we kill this guy here, there will be another option to always attack without moving, and we'll go into that once we get this guy here. But before we begin here, I want to have a little bit of a showcase on the items that we're going to be needing, or the tools we're going to be needing, rather, and what they sort of do. Very simply, I don't want to get too much into it because you can make videos about this stuff and not even skim the surface. So the first of many tools that is going to be used in this game is going to be called Path of Building. Now, Path of Building is essentially like, think of it like the Paragon tree in Diablo 4, but you have all the Paragon boards unlocked, and they're all linked, but you don't have any points selected to them. And normally, if you're playing a game like Diablo 4, you will look at a guide to see how they path and where they go. And this is essentially the entire skill tree that we have in Path of Exile that is going to be described in a way that is going to be very unappealing for new players. But if you've been around this game quite a long time, you understand where things are. So download Path of Building, make sure it's selected, and load it up. And when you load it up, it's going to be looking like this. You're obviously not going to have these names here, but the only thing you want to do is hit New up at the top. So you hit New, and it opens up the skill tree. And wow, this is really daunting. There's all these different buttons here. There's all these different points. I don't even know where to begin. Don't get overwhelmed. This is one of the biggest things for me personally that made it very intimidating, knowing that there's all these different skill choices. But the great thing is that you will start at these nodes here. So these certain nodes right here that look like this kind of wheel, every single ascendancy class that we spoke about earlier, when it comes to the duelist, the shadow, the marauder, the witch, the ranger, etc., they will all start at a certain location. So you don't have to worry about, oh no, I need to go over here and get this when I'm starting over here. It's just, don't even worry about it. Follow a guide. Follow something that's going to be easy to learn, and possibly something that's going to be fun for you. One of the only ways to find out what is going to be fun is by watching videos, right? Or you can test the skills in-game if you'd like to. But I definitely recommend just like watching a video about a build and kind of seeing if it's something that you might enjoy. So, okay, so we have this opened here. Now, how are we going to import a build into the build guide? So what we are going to do is we're going to go up top to the left-hand side where it says import/export build. You click that button there. And then build sharing down here. You're going to see to import a build, enter the URL or code here. So you're going to click there, leave it open. And when you found a build that you really enjoy, you're going to go to, it's going to bring you with this link here, which is going to be called pob.in. It's basically the global website that hosts a lot of these different builds. And the build that I'm playing is going to be a Lacerate of Hemorrhage Gladiator. So Gladiator is going to be a duelist. It's going to be this character right here. That's the character we're going to play. Just like if it was Last Epoch, it would say Lacerate of Hemorrhage, Paladin or something. That way you know that it's going to be a specific Ascended class. So none of this stuff really will make sense at the very start. Just know that this is the build you're going to be playing. And this code over here is what's going to be imported into Path of Building. So we're just going to simply hit copy. It's going to copy everything. Or you can right click in here and hit copy. We're going to go down to Path of Building, where our build sharing is here. We're going to click inside this open box here. We're going to we can either control V to paste it, or we can right click it to paste it. And then you're going to hit import. And it's going to bring up this, which might still be very confusing, but do not get overwhelmed. It's a very simple and easy kind of configuration to go through here. So this is basically what you're going to be doing at the very end game. It loads it up at the very end of the game to show you what all of your skill points are going into. Now you can level up your character and go through each one individually like this. But the thing you don't understand is, when are things most important in the game? So you'll hit certain milestones in the game that'll be very important for you to have certain points invested before you hit those milestones. So the best way to do that is to come down here at the bottom. Oops, let me get rid of my face here. So you come down here at the bottom where it says ladder or later tree map tree. You click that button there and you're going to see all of these different levels. Now, this is going to be wonderful for new players because it'll allow you to sort of minimize the amount of information that you're seeing. And you can also use this tool to sort of advance further to see what points you need to select, what points are very useful, and what you need to invest in by a specific level. Now, through this playthrough, we might be a little bit higher level than what this is recommended as, and that's totally fine. This is just general recommendations on different things like that. The individual who I'm getting this build from is Ron Array. He's a YouTuber. Go give him a shout out. But this is basically going to be the skill tree for the first 9 levels. This is what you're going to choose, these points here. If you make a mistake and you go here, don't worry about it. It's totally fine. And later on in the game, you'll find currency to give yourself some skill points back. Or you'll complete quests, and that will reward you with something that you'll be able to remove these skill points. But just make sure that you follow this track here. It's a very easy thing to pay attention to. And if you need to take time each level to figure out which one you're getting next, that's totally fine. Play at your own pace. Now, something that I found very interesting with Path of Building is there's a little compare button down here. And if you highlight that compare button, it opens another tab. And you can use this to showcase what you have. The left side is currently what you are on. The right side is currently what you are working towards. So you can see that after level 9, these are the points we want to go into. We go down one more there and one more there. And at level 32, these are the points you want to get into. These are all the points you want to get once you're about level 32. And you keep going from there. So it's a very simple and easy way to kind of showcase you know, what skills you currently have, what skills you're currently looking for, etc., things like that. And I would just simply follow this guide because it has served me well in this league. And it should serve you well as well. But just be aware that it is kind of daunting. You don't really want to go off the beaten path because your character will be a lot different moving forward if you try to go away from what the build guide is creating, and it's going to make things a little bit more complicated for you. So, going forward, if you don't have Path of Building, that's totally fine. You can use pob.in, which is what the site is, or which is what the code was copied from. But just be aware that you will need to use these drop downs in order to figure out where you are next. So, getting a little bit into spells, you can see that if you mouse over things, you can see where you get the gem from, and we'll talk a little bit more about what the gems do when we actually start playing the game. You can also see here that there's a tree preview, and it highlights these in blue, in light blue, so you can just simply follow this if you don't want to download Path of Building. Path of Building just makes it so it's one program for everything, and you don't need a new web page in order to look at what you're trying to do. Okay, so after we've downloaded Path of Building, the next thing I would recommend is getting a loot filter. Now, the best way to get a loot filter that I've found is to go to pathofexile.com, mouse over game, go to item filters, and then hit this never sync 1 regular dash softcore. This is going to be your basic loot filter that you're going to be using for the entirety of the game. So you just need to follow it once. I haven't followed it, so let's follow it. And these are going to be item filters. They're basically the gold standard for Path of Exile filtering. Now, there are different levels of the item filter. There are levels that show a lot of items. There are levels that show very little items. And we want to show as many items that are going to be useful for our class. That way we can discern what is going to be good for us and kind of filter out all the stuff that's not going to be good for us. So we have, regular, we have semi-strict, we have strict, we have very strict, we have uber strict, we have uber plus strict, and then there's zero soft. So you don't want to ever go to uber strict because that's only going to show maybe 2 or 3 items when you want to show like 10 or 20, right? So just go to never sync regular softcore and hit follow, and that's it. That's all you have to do, right? So a very simple way of getting an item filter. Another website you can potentially use will be, once you get a little bit more advanced, or if you enjoy these sorts of things, is going to be filterblade.xyz. This will have its own sort of loot filter that you can have, right? And this isn't anything that is required for this. Now, the first one that we showed, these never syncs item filters, these would all be kind of mandatory for this game in order to play it currently. Now, these are different things you can show. These are all the different items in the game that will show up, and you can label them different tiers. You can give them different colors. You can basically do whatever you want with them. It's very easy. Excuse me. It's a very easy way to sort of figure out what items are going to be good, what items are valuable, what items you're not going to need, etc. So we've gotten the loot filter, and we've gotten Path of Building. The next one we're going to go through is going to be Awakened PoE. And there's been a lot of people making videos about Awakened PoE, why it's required, different things like that. But it's basically going to be a way for you to check the price of things in-game without having to go to the trade website and look at everything, every little niche, a fix that you have on an item. It'll basically have a global database of items that you can check from. So it's very helpful if you find something that you think might be good, and you want to sell it for currency, you want to make some currency in the league. It's a very useful tool to have. And you can just get this by going to Awakened PoE Trade, making sure it's the GitHub pages, download Awakened PoE Trade, and then installing it, hitting this download link to install it. Now, this will have to be opened before you start PoE. It is not something that is affiliated with Grinding Gear Games. So do be aware that if you restart your computer or you shut it down and you open it back up, you will have to enable it. But it's a very passive sort of a program that won't require any necessary effect. Essentially just double click it on your desktop, and if you go down to your taskbar here, you can see that Awakened PoE Trade is enabled. So moving forward, we are ready to play the game. We have our loot filter, we have Path of Building ready to go with all of our skills and everything selected, and we have Awakened PoE Trade. So let's jump into the game and we'll start explaining things a little bit more. So you move left click to move around. You can hold it down to move your character around. We're going to talk to this guy. This guy's gonna, Hungry Corpse is gonna eat him, and these zombies will start walking towards you. Now, the great thing about Path of Exile is every enemy has a telegraphed attack. And what I mean by that is you can move around him. He attacks me, and I move. He attacks me, and I move. So if you know the different mechanics of how an enemy is going to attack, which will happen through different plays, don't be alarmed if you can't understand when an enemy's attacking you. It's totally fine. There's lots of games out there, the ARPGs specifically, that don't have this. So this is a nice little bit of defense that you can really utilize moving forward if you're struggling with sort of content. So we're going to kill this guy, right-click to hold down, and we get our first skill gems. We get Double Strike. Now, this is where it gets a little bit complicated. There are attacks, spells, and like passives or support gems, right? Those are basically the numbers of abilities that you have in the game. Double Strike, you can see here. If you're just reading the the tags underneath Double Strike, this is attack, melee, strike, and physical. So any support gem that we have that's going to be that also has those tags is going to support this gem. And as you can see, it performs 2 fast strikes with melee weapon and a 25% chance to cause bleeding. So that's good. We are going to be using this for our very first skill. So you're going to left click it to select it, and then you're going to drop it into your gem slot. And what that will do is it'll bring up a new skill on your bar. So what you can do is you can remove this. You left click these items in order to bring up this menu, hit clear this slot, select Double Strike, and select clear this slot. So now we have our Double Strike enabled on our build. And one thing I definitely recommend doing is always attack without moving. Keep this selected. If you don't, then your character is going to walk over to an area and attack, as opposed to always attacking when you hit the skill, which is very helpful because some abilities like spells, for example, you don't necessarily want to be in the opponent's face. When you're casting these spells, you want to be able to just sort of cast them before they get to you. So this makes it very helpful. So I definitely recommend doing that at the very start when you get your first skill. So let's jump through here. Let's take a look at what all these things are. We have small life flasks down here. We have a small mana flask. We have our life. We have our shield. And then we have our mana. And mana is basically how all your skills are set up. If you don't have mana, you won't be able to cast any of your skills. So having a mana potion is nice to have at the very start. Eventually, you get to the point where you won't need this because your regeneration is so strong that you can switch off and have another different type of flask. As you can see, mousing over this, it says recover 70 life over 3 seconds. It also consumes 7 of 21 charges on use, and it currently has 21 charges. Now, the things with Path of Exile flasks are very important. In most games, like Last Epoch or Diablo, for example, you have to pick them up off the ground, and then you're able to use them. And that's the only way you can realistically get health potions is by either killing enemies that drop them, or by simply having like an affix, like in Diablo 4, for example, that enables you to spawn more health potions. In Path of Exile, that is not the case. In Path of Exile, the only way you can refill your flasks is by killing monsters, or a neat little trick is to portal out of the area, go into town, and then portal back in, and that way your flasks will be refilled. But for the basis of this video, the very first walkthrough, we're just going to worry about killing monsters. So it refills as you kill monsters, and it is basically just a very simple way of figuring this sort of thing out. So we've got some monsters attacking us. You know, right click to kill them. We kill these guys here, kill these guys here. And it's not necessary your first playthrough to kill every single item or every single enemy necessarily. But if you want to, don't feel bad, right? I think my very first time that I played this game, I had a Diablo 2 brain, and I cleared every single map. I was just exploring, just because I like to explore in games like this. And I actually learned a lot about the game. I learned that there were a lot of things not necessary to do that I had done previously, so it was a big waste of time for me. So don't be like me, and don't explore the entire area. But if you want to, it's by all means your choice, and just know that it's going to take longer for you to sort of run through these maps. So there are going to be other things around the area, like barrels, for example. Barrels have a chance to contain items. They have a chance to explode to damage you, for example. So do be aware that not every single item is going to be on the ground, at least. Not every single interactable necessarily is going to be very useful. Okay, so moving forward, we're going to progress through here. And you can see he's doing the same thing to me, where if I attack him, I can't hit him, but I have to move closer. So make sure that you're next to the enemy before you actually attack them. Now, this large chest will always be here, and it'll always contain this gem, Chance to Bleed. And these are going to be support skills. Now, as you can see at the very top, this is attack, physical, support, underneath Chance to Bleed support. And looking at our double strike, you're going to see that this is attack, melee strike, and physical. So we socket that in there. We pick up this this passive skill gem, the support skill gem, and we're going to socket into our sword. And what that will do is it will now give our attacks another 25% chance to cause bleeding, and the supported attacks deal 10% more damage. So this is essentially the way that skills work and passive skills work in Path of Exile. You're going to have your main attack skill, one that you're going to invest all of your items around, the main damage dealer, and then you're going to have a bunch of support gems that support this spell or attack to make it even stronger, or manipulate it into doing other things. And as you can see down here on the bottom, it gives us a little icon here, this little E. I'm not exactly too sure what the E means, but just know that when you have this E here, it means that it's got Chance to Bleed support, which is probably something in the internal of the game. It's not very important to explain right now, but just know that if you don't have this enabled, you won't see the little E down there, but if you do, you will. So you want to see a modifier down there. Okay, so moving forward, we are on the beach. We're moving through. We got zombies. We have our experience bar down here. You can mouse over it, and you can see how much experience you have, what your EXP per hour is, and how much experience you need to go to the next level. So going through here, we're going to progress, and we come across our first boss, Hillock. So Hillock is a very simple boss, and the reason why I say simple boss is because you could essentially walk around him in a circle, and he will not attack you. As you can see here, I'm walking around in a circle around him, and he's not attacking me. So it's very easy, and if you just coordinate your attacks with what he's doing, you can not get hit and bleed. If you do get hit, it's not a big deal. You can just use a health potion. You know, he doesn't hit very strong. But this is essentially how you will win against bosses and against stronger enemies, is you will manipulate their attack with your defense. That's why moving around a character like this is going to be a lot better in terms of defense as opposed to just trying to run away, because they will have an attack pattern and you can manipulate that attack pattern. Now, obviously, before he was using his fist with a sword, he hits us for a lot more, so don't worry about it. It's totally fine. Just keep running around. We're out of mana right now, and as you can see, the mana regen is very slow. So we'll hit number 4, and it'll recharge our mana. We can keep going. or we might have to wait a little bit because we use a mana potion. We don't have any mana. And we just want to get rid of this guy. So we got pretty close there, but we just used our health potion to get ourselves back up. And we killed him. And we're now level 2. So make sure you pick up everything off this first boss here. Oh, before we begin, sorry. I failed to mention this. We want to go to game. We want to go to item filter, and we want to select never sync regular softcore. And we hit this refresh button here to refresh. Hit save. Let's see here. We want to make sure local here is selected. That way it'll show us what the loot filter is and if it's been refreshed. Right here you can see that there. It's updated. It's August 10th, which is August 10th right now, and it's updated at the correct time. If you do change loot filters frequently, you might have to wait a few minutes for them to actually update in game, but it's a very simple thing to do. So make sure you have never sync regular softcore selected as your item filter. And that'll show all the items necessary. So pick up all those items off Hillock, and let's go into the next town, Lion's Eye Watch, which is our very first hub, where we'll see a bunch of different players. We'll have a lot of different vendors, and it'll be where we get our first quests. So noticing that there's a lot of different items that we have here. We've picked up a plate vest here. We have a shabby jerkin. We have a rusted sword, driftwood scepter, and a superior sprig spirit shield. Now there will be unidentified items in the game, and you'll have to use your scrolls of wisdom in order to identify them. And you simply right-click it, and then left-click the items, and you'll get some stats on it. Now these stats will be dependent on what sort of item level you have for your item. This one, as you can see, I'm holding down the Alt key. Shows a little bit more information when you're holding down the Alt key, and it's going to show you the item level. It's going to show you the implicit modifier. It'll show you the prefix modifier and the suffix modifier. And this is nice to know because you can see where your item lands and what is good on an item and what makes the item so good as well. So as you can see, I got kind of lucky with this. I got the prefix modifier, Flame Shapers Tier 1. Tier 1 is going to be the highest tier. So it's not very confusing in the sense that Last Epoch, I think Tier 7 is the highest, which can be a little bit daunting when you're looking at items. But just know that this, holding down Alt and looking over an item like this will give you the best understanding of how things work. Now, also, looking at the dash next to Flame Shapers Tier 1, it says Elemental, Fire, Caster, and Gem. And this lets you know that these are the other skill tags that are associated with this prefix. It'll let you know that it's based off Elemental, it's based off Fire, it's based off Caster, and based off Gems. So this gives a +1 level to all Fire skill gems. So if I had a Fire skill gem, it would work perfectly for me, but that's not the case. So, yeah, so moving forward, we don't want to keep any of these sort of items. We have a lot of different affixes for items in general and armor in general, but a rule of thumb to think about is armor is going to give red sockets because it's going to be strength-based. Evasion is going to be green sockets because it's going to be dexterity-based. And blue is going to be intelligence intelligence gear, evasion, energy shield, excuse me. Energy shield will be based around having blue sockets for intelligence. So there's 3 different types of defenses in the game that you can build. You can build all 3 of them if you like to. You can build just one if you'd like to for your first playthrough. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Just try to understand that there are different types of defenses you can build. It's not just all one build where, like in Diablo, you just build armor and then you build resistances and you're all set to go and you don't have to worry about it too much. It's a little different than that. So, with that being said, a couple of things to understand before we get into the playability of the class is a good thing to do is just to go by here and talk to all these guys here. Just get the skill or just get the quest finished, and then your quests will appear on the right-hand side. Mercy mission, enemy at the gate, these are basically the quests that we've done. And since we ended up killing Hillock, we ended up getting a reward. So it says talk to Tarley for your reward. We talk to him, go to Hillock reward. This is in case you were skipping past the dialogue or you maybe failed to get an item from them as well. So we're going to hit Tarley reward or Hillock reward. And this will give us 5 different options for gems. So we can see which support gems work well with this skill. These are going to give us sort of some suggestions based off of it. Now you can have these labeled and like shown on your gems themselves. And the way you do this is you go into UI and you go to support gem utility pop-up. So it says shows supportable skill list when hovering over a support gem. So that way you're able to understand what support gem it goes with. If I unsocket this, for example, it has the check mark next to Double Strike. Lets me know that this support gem works with Double Strike. So we're going to do that. And now we ended up getting a new skill reward, but we don't know if one of these skills is going to be usable in our build. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to Path of Building. We're going to go to level 9 down here. We see our talents that we have, and then we're going to go into skills. And skills, you'll have to change it as well, level 1 to level 12. Splitting Steel. And you can see the very first skill that we get is going to be Splitting Steel. You can also see it here. You can click each different node here, and it'll give you what it expects it to be linked with. Now, you don't need to make sure that everything is linked exactly as it is here. It's going to be a lot easier later on once you get into low or higher level maps and things like that. It's going to be a lot more effective to have your main skills linked with these. It's going to give the most damage you possibly can. But if you don't get that, it's not necessary. Don't think that your build is ruined if you don't get it like that. So this tells us that we want to get Splitting Steel, and we also want Chance to Poison and Chance to Bleed. And we have 3 green and 1 red. So eventually we need to get an item, whether it be a sword, a plate, an armor, body armor, a helmet, a pair of gloves, or a pair of boots that have 2 green and 1 red. We obviously don't have 2 green, 1 red here, so it's not that big a deal. So I'll hit Splitting Steel, and we completed our first quest. Now what we do when we want to switch the Splitting Steel gem is we left click it, mouse it over to Double Strike, and replace it. And it will replace it down here with Splitting Steel. Now Splitting Steel is a different ability. Doesn't work the same as Double Strike, but if you read the tooltips in here, you can sort of get an understanding as to how it works. So this fires a single projectile that splits on impact or at the targeted location, dealing area damage when it splits, and again when the split projectiles explode at the end of their flight. And it says it requires a sword or an axe. Luckily for us, we have a sword, so it works very well with us. And the build we're going to be using for this will be an axe build. So we're going to be using axes essentially down the road. So this is totally fine to use. It also causes more damage with bleeding because we have Chance to Bleed on it. Now, if you didn't know if an item worked or a support gem worked with it, you can also mouse over the item, and if you see the colors, the socket colors light up, that lets you know that those support gems work with it. Otherwise, you can take it out and double check to make sure that the supported skills are working correctly with this. So we have the loot filter. We have the Path of Building, and we have Awakened PoE Trade. Now, Path of Building and your loot filter are going to be used all throughout the entire campaign. You're going to be wanting to keep up to date on these sorts of things the entire way through. And when you reach new milestones, you're going to want to change the different locations in here. Obviously, once we get to level 12, we're going to swap off that, and we're going to go down to this one here. And this is going to give us a bunch of new skills that we need to get and link. When we get level B, or when we're done with level 12, when we get to level 32, we're going to switch to this one, and we're going to see all these different other skills as well. And don't worry about not having any of these skills right now. We will get them later on, so it'll be a lot easier. You can also go into items here for this build, and it'll basically give you notes as to what kind of thing you're looking for, right? So, for example, this build, we're going to be looking for any weapon with high physical DPS, and it's going to be, that's basically all we're looking for right now, is any weapon with high physical DPS for levels 1 through 30. We don't need to worry too much about anything else other than that, so that makes it very simple, very easy in order to understand what we are going for. And we have to look at the items when they drop. We have to identify them most times or not, and we have to look to see if it's an item that's going to be good for us. Now, there's also other things like here, like body armor. It mentions pick any armor with life or stats, for example. So anything that gives us plus life or gives us plus intelligence or plus dexterity or something like that is going to be very useful. Boots, there are a number of people out there that will tell you it is not worth to pick up boots that don't have any movement speed on them. You're totally fine if you don't find any movement speed, or you just get really unlucky, for example. You can use these sort of tips and tricks to sort of filter what you're going to be looking for. A coral amulet gives us health regen. Sapphire rings says try to get these before Merveil. I don't even know who Merveil is, but we're going to find out who she is. So just make sure that you have these sapphire rings before you face Merveil. Chain belt, it's the best option early for ES. ES meaning energy shield. And then life flasks, as well as a mana flask, as well as a quicksilver flask. So there's all these different types of flasks in the game, but you don't need to get too crazy with them. Just make sure that you have some life flasks, make sure you have some mana flasks, and a quicksilver flask. And that's basically all you need in order to run the game. Now, so we hit level 1. We have our first skill point, and we're going to invest it. This is the first 9 points that we're going to make. Going to make the point off to the right. So what we do is we go into our game here. We left click on passive skill point, and we choose this right one here. We hit it first. Now you can figure out how many points you want to do when you have a lot of points, but for right now, we're just going to be hitting the left one and hitting apply points, and that's going to apply all the points that we've put in there, and it's going to give us these stats. These little stats here aren't very helpful in the long run. These are basically just ways to connect, to get further through the tree, to get all these other different skills. Usually 9 times out of 10, the bigger the node, the more impact it will have on your character. So nodes like this, for example, will be very impactful because it's a lot larger than, say, something like this. Or something like this is a lot better than something like this, for example. So just be aware that the size of the actual talent itself will make a huge impact moving forward. Okay, so we've leveled up. We have our item filter. We have our path of building. And we have Awakened PoE Trade. Now, Awakened PoE Trade, what it does is it gives you like I said, a currency, gives you the value of the item that you have when you pick up the item. And the way to select it is you hold control, you hit D as in dog, and it'll pop up with this sort of a window. And if you keep holding down control, you can move your mouse over, and it will enable the add-on. And you can mouse over here and click search, and it'll show you basically how much things are going for, right? So this is a great way of trying to understand why something is so expensive, why something is so good. This will kind of give you an idea as to what things are going for, how much they cost, essentially like that. So I wouldn't use this too liberally. I wouldn't check every single item that you pick up. But if you get an item that looks like it could be good, yeah, check it out. See what you can find on here and see if it's going to be worth anything. So, we have gotten our skills, we've gotten our POB, we have gotten our Awaken Trade, and we made all the necessary adjustments when it comes to the settings, and we're ready to play the game. So let's jump into the coast.